It's not often that I'm at a loss for words, but Charleston, honestly, I just don't know. When I first heard the news about what happened there, I know I'm not the only one who thought of that terrible day back in 1963 when we learned that a church bombing had taken the lives of four little girls in Sunday school. Those images of grief and loss out of Charleston, they're just a reminder of the work we still have before us as a nation. And to say as a nation is actually a little bit of a cop out. They're a reminder of the work we have before us if you, like me, are white and American. Because the white community of the United States, people will object to this, but I'm telling you, we need to really look long and hard at our collective conscience to see what we might do differently, to change the dialogue, to change the conversation, so to change the thinking that might in some way, of course, I'm not blaming anybody, any innocent person for this horrific crime, but anything that might be changing the tone, the conscience of the country in a negative way and making this sort of incident even the slightest bit more likely. I really do think we need to explore that. And that's why later in the program, we will be talking to white race relations expert Robin DiAngelo about it. And let's not forget the terrorism angle here, too. We talk about terrorism a lot in this country, and we talk about, for a lot of people, that's terrorism is something committed by the other, by the foreigner, by the Muslim, by the dark skinned person. But when we speak about terrorism in this country, let's not forget that millions of African Americans live in daily terror of racially inspired attacks like these, terror of the very police force that is supposed to protect them. This is terror also. So the question we have to ask ourselves is why? And when a murder like this happens, why is it that people of disturbed or violent inclination, white people of disturbed or violent inclination, turn against members of a minority community? Why does their particular madness, anger, and rage manifest itself in this way? Back in the 60s, there was a song by Bob Dylan called Only a Pawn in Their Game. It was about the killing of Medgar Evers. And it basically said that Medgar Evers was a pawn to larger forces. Now, Bill O'Reilly got very upset when one of the murder victims' friends said the Fox News-like mentality. He didn't say Fox News necessarily, but that type of mentality contributes to the climate that might lead to something like this. We should explore that. We should really look into that. I think that's a point worth pondering deeply. Look, we're not responsible as a society for the actions of individual madmen, or if this guy, maybe he wasn't a madman, he certainly planned this crime for a long time. But while we're not responsible for the actions of individuals, we are responsible for creating an atmosphere of fear and hatred that's directed against peaceful citizens simply because of the color of their skin. There have been too many of these violent incidents, whether it's the epidemic of police shootings or fights at swimming pools and other public places. There have been too many violent incidents to consider them merely random occurrences. We have to believe that larger forces are at work. Now, this incident, it's a reminder that we have a lot to do to eradicate the historical record of racism. Even our places of worship don't seem to serve as sanctuary from this legacy, a legacy we must all, in the white community, work to erase. We need to ask ourselves some tough questions. Why, after 50 years, are we still seeing the same kind of violence in church that horrified us on that terrible day in 1963? Why, after 150 years, is the work of full equality for all still incomplete? Why, after 400 years, are African American bodies still financially exploited through joblessness, lack of opportunity, and the financial imperatives of the for-profit criminal justice system? And most of all, what can we do to change these things? I hope we can learn something from this terrible tragedy. Until then, of course, our thoughts are with the families, their church, their community, and with people everywhere who are mourning this loss. Now, in just a moment, I will talk with Chris Hedges, the writer and former war correspondent who has written a new book on the moral imperative of revolt. At what point do we need to make a dramatic, nonviolent, but dramatic revolutionary shift from the situation as it exists to the situation that must be if we are to survive as a community, as a nation, as a people, as a planet? We'll be talking with Chris Hedges about that. We'll have a number of other interviews in this program I think you'll find interesting and valuable. So please stick with us. It is a tragic week, but it is a week in which we must redouble our commitment to doing what needs to be done to improve society. I'm Richard RJ Eskow, and this is The Zero